All right, we here, we live. Urban Artificial Intelligence Juneteenth show. I was presently surprised I didn't have to work today. I ain't know that Juneteenth was really lit like that. All right, I didn't know niggas got off. I didn't know that some people don't work on Juneteenth, so that's what I'm gonna be doing today. Going live, probably gonna go live a couple other times, depending on what's going on in the news. But for this live, man, I want to talk about Taxstone and Joe Budden. All right, Taxstone has been in jail for several years at this point. All right, I'm gonna get we're gonna talk about all of it. We're gonna go back from the beginning just to do a little catch up on everything that's going on, and we're gonna talk about it. All right, but this man has been in prison for years. All right, he's been in prison for years, but every time he says something, people respond. Every time he speaks on certain issues or he just talks, really no matter what he's talking about, every time he says something controversial, people respond. And this man is in jail, y'all. He's been in jail for years. My personal opinion, he might as well start a full podcast operation from prison. Now, that's my personal opinion. There could be things going on with him in his life that he's not able to do that. But from my perspective, and this is a strategic thinking media platform, from my perspective, it seems every time he speaks, he goes viral. Or it's people with big platforms that respond to what he says. And he's been going for a long time. And people always respond to what he say. It's kind of like, regardless of his circumstances, he's supposed to be in the space for whatever reason. For whatever reason. Because he's not in a power position in the podcast space like he was before. But he's still getting the respect and he's still getting the engagement as if he was out in the streets still. So if you don't know who Taxstone is, we're going to get into that. But first, let's go to Copilot, all right? And let's see. The reason that I'm doing this is because he recently said some things about Nori and Joe Budden that we're going to get into. All right. Again, this live might be a little bit longer because it's a lot surrounding us. But let me just do this. Why do Joe Budden and Taxstone not like each other? If you're not familiar with the beef, let's get into it.
Joe Budden and Taxstone have a history of animosity, particularly related to domestic violence claims. It all started when Joe's ex-girlfriend, Tahiri Jose, accused him of physically abusing her. Taxstone, who is currently serving a 35-year prison sentence for killing Troy Ave's bodyguard, Ronald Bunga Muckfatter, took a jab at Joe. This led to a heated online exchange where insults flew back and forth, with both men rehashing past beef. So, their dislike for each other stems from a combination of personal history and public disagreements.
All right, now, this is the recent issue. It started before this. This kind of is what it reignited it. And this is what I'm saying about him getting attention when he decides to speak, because they've went back and forth before. Every time he talks, Joe replies. This man is serving a 35-year prison sentence, man. Joe Budden really has no valid reason to respond. I don't know why he does. Or I think I do. I don't know for sure. But my personal opinion is that even though Taxstone is locked away and he hasn't been active on the podcast scene for several years, Taxstone, in Joe's mind, in his soul, Joe knows that Taxstone is a podcast pioneer, and what he says matters in the podcast world. Now, Joe's fame and Joe's notoriety surpasses the podcast world. He's as commercial of a podcaster as you can be, really. So he's on a whole nother level than what Taxstone was able to achieve while he was free. Taxstone podcast was fairly new when he was arrested for murder. His podcast was fairly new. It was kind of just beginning. All right. And one of the first issues that Taxstone had with Joe Budden was over Joe Budden's remarks about Combat Jack. All right. Now, Combat Jack is probably one of the first. He's probably the first hip hop podcaster. If you want to say that, I don't know how, I don't know how accurate that is. As far as like technically, but in the culture, he's recognized as the person who kind of started rap podcasts. Okay, so if you don't know who Combat Jack, it's important to know who that is for this conversation. So we're gonna go to Copilot. Copilot, who is Combat Jack?
Combat Jack, whose real name was Reginald Joseph Ossie, was a Haitian-American hip-hop music attorney, executive, journalist, editor, and podcaster. He gained prominence in the hip-hop community through his work as the managing editor of The Source magazine. However, he became even more widely known for his podcast, The Combat Jack Show, where he engaged in discussions and interviews related to hip-hop, music, race, and culture. His authoritative and vivacious approach made him a respected figure in the industry. Unfortunately, Combat Jack passed away in 2017 due to colon cancer. If you're interested, you can explore his podcast legacy and the impact he had on hip-hop conversations. Read more about Combat Jack. Listen to The Combat Jack Show.
All right, so that's who Combat Jack was. He was a pioneer, and that was the first podcast that I ever really seen rap be discussed. Okay, it was so early that I don't even think I knew what a podcast was back then. I just knew it as a Combat Jack Show. I didn't really mentally organize it as a podcast. Now that's what it was. And once podcasts got more popular, it became all of these guidelines that the Combat Jack Show had followed. He was a pioneer, and I don't know if he knew how big podcasting would be. Probably so, but he worked for the Source magazine, so he was already good at writing, and he was a lawyer or an attorney. He was a hip hop music attorney, an executive journalist, editor, and podcast. All right, so he was articulate and he knew talking points and things like that. So in the podcast world, Combat Jack is like the Michael Jordan, basically, of hip hop podcasting, of urban podcasting. You know what I'm saying? He's like the Michael Jordan, the ultimate. Even more than Michael Jordan, I would say, because he's kind of the pioneer. He's like, he was the best at it, and he's the person who kind of started it. All right. Jordan was the greatest NBA player of all time. Jordan wasn't the first NBA player, though. It was several great players before him. So Combat Jack was like all of that in one. All right. So just to, give y'all some foundation on who Combat Jack was and why, if you talk about Combat Jack in a negative way, you're gonna get some backlash. All right, now, okay, let's just. I don't want to do too much. Okay, how did Combat Jack influence hip hop journalism and podcasting? Let's hear.
Reggie Combat Jack Ossie left an indelible mark on hip-hop journalism and podcasting. His legacy continues to resonate through the following key contributions. Pioneering Black podcasting. Combat Jack was a trailblazer, featuring the hottest artists, academics, and media figures on his podcast, The Combat Jack Show. He shattered the myth that Black podcasts were only for entertainment, ushering in a new wave of thought-provoking Black podcasters. Elevating Black voices. Combat Jack intentionally highlighted and listened to the brilliant voices of Black women on his show. His commitment to uplifting Black culture and amplifying marginalized voices set a high standard for podcasting. Groundbreaking content. Through his interviews, Combat Jack preserved hip-hop history, ensuring that legend stories were heard. His show provided a platform for artists, industry insiders, and cultural icons to share their experiences. Legitimizing podcasting. The Combat Jack Show and other Loudspeakers Network creations proved that authentic hip-hop-influenced content had a viable audience beyond radio. Combat Jack's influence helped legitimize podcasting as an entertainment medium. In essence, Combat Jack's impact extends far beyond the mic, shaping the landscape of hip-hop media and podcasting.
Okay, so there you go. They explained it much better than I did. You see that? Y'all see? That's why I use Copilot. So basically, he the reason that people get paid for podcasting, all right? If it wasn't for Combat Jack, niggas would just be sitting around doing podcasts for free. He's the one who legitimized podcasting. He's the one who created a network and was able to facilitate the blueprint of the ad system, okay? I own Dove soap or Bluebell ice cream or Coca-Cola soda. Combat Jack is the reason why brands like that go to podcasters and say, hey, advertise for us, we'll pay you, we'll sponsor your podcast, and we'll give you money if you say how good Bluebell ice cream is, or if you put a little logo of Coca-Cola on the screen, all right? His thoughts and his actions led to that, okay? So $1 million worth of game, Brilliant Idiots, Joe Budden podcast, Rory and Mal, all the podcasts that you see that people getting paid for, Combat Jack is the one that kind of set the stage for that. All right. So now that we got that out of the way, did Combat Jack and Joe Budden have beef? Let's find out.
Joe Budden and Combat Jack had some contentious moments, particularly related to podcasting. During a recent episode of the Joe Budden podcast, Joe and NORE discussed Combat Jack's podcasting business practices. NORE dismissed Combat Jack's approach, claiming that he and DJ EFN were the first to own their IPOs and that others had given away their YouTube channels for free. This sparked backlash from the hip-hop podcasting community, who criticized the duo for their dismissive remarks about the late innovator. While there were disagreements, it's essential to recognize Combat Jack's significant impact on rap podcasting, especially through his show, The Combat Jack Show. If you're curious, you can listen to the episode where Joe Budden appeared on The Combat Jack Show here. Additionally, Joe Budden has been involved in various other rap beefs throughout his career. Read more about Joe Budden's rap beefs. Listen to the Joe Budden episode on The Combat Jack Show. Joe Budden and
All right, now, there you go right there. So, Joe Budden and Noriega both made comments about Combat Jack and his business practices. Basically, what they were saying was, if you signed to his network, if you are a podcaster and you signed to Combat Jack's network, then you are getting jerked. That's basically what they were saying. And this wasn't recent. I don't know why Copilot said that. This wasn't recent. This was a while ago. This was leading up to everything that we see happening now. So Noriega and Joe Budden, I remember specifically. I don't want to play it because it's Drink Champs. I don't want to play it. They might hit me or strike me or something. But Noriega was basically laughing at the niggas that signed to the Loudspeaker Network. He was basically saying, y'all getting jerked. And Combat Jack, y'all was giving away. He was giving y'all a flat fee, but he was taking the YouTube money. Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true, but when you say things like that about somebody that's loved like Combat Jack in the podcast space, you're gonna get some pushback from that. All right. Now, moving forward, getting up to date here. Let's talk about the things that were recently said. All right. Taxstone was just recently on a Twitter Spaces. All right. And every time he get on Twitter Spaces, the shit goes up. That's why I feel he might as well start a full podcast operation from prison again. Okay, so before we even get into that, let's take a look at Taxstone and Joe Budden's first ever podcast. Now, this in itself is pretty. These dudes was before their time, man, and it's really unfortunate that Taxstone is in prison for such a long time. Now, this is the initial podcast. This is when Joe Budden was on Taxstone podcast. This is what happened at the end of the episode.
Nah, son. This nigga's crazy, so let's end this shit.
Yeah, you good?
I'm asking this nigga a fucking question.
All right, that was tax season.
Stop playing that therapist shit.
Yo, this episode was great because you can't tell, but they actually had a good conversation before this. Like they was going back and forth, but it was a good show. It was a good show.
I mean, son, like don't do that
for having me, Tax. I
appreciate you. This nigga's retarded, son. Come on.
Thank you so much.
What the fuck, son? What type of shit is this, son? What type of shit?
Thank you for inviting me.
What is wrong with this dude?
Tax.
Oh, I'm confused.
I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm confused. Like, son, come on, son.
I can't believe y'all don't know each other.
What is wrong with this retarded? This nigga's retarded. Yo, how do you?
All right, there go Rory right there. Rory from the Rory Mob podcast. He was there. And I don't know what that lady was talking about saying they don't know each other. They definitely know each other. They knew each other before this.
Nah, son. This nigga's crazy, so let's end this shit.
Yeah, you good?
I'm asking this nigga a fucking question.
All right, that was tax season.
Stop playing that therapist shit with me, son. Like, don't do that with me, son.
All right, so and this was years and years ago. So I'm just giving y'all a backdrop of the turbulence in their relationship up to this point. Now, let's get into what was recently said. All right, about Nori. And salute the Polo World, Billionaire Polo on Twitter. This dude here, he kind of clipped it up and put some of the most important parts into one video. So that's what we're gonna look at now. All right. So this was actually yesterday. All right, this was on the 18th on Twitter Spaces. Taxstone had this to say about Joe Budden and Noriega.
Respectful, cool dude, made me drinks and all that shit. So, and this is a nigga that I've been speaking to my whole time in jail, literally my whole time. And I'm mad because I tell a nigga, do not talk about my friend. My friend is dead. And when my friend was alive, you never spoke ill of him. And you was trying to get a job for my friend for years, trying to get a job. And I could be honest and tell people like, yo, the real shit was that he didn't take it at first because he didn't want the rest of the crowd that he had. When he had Joe Buttons and Marissa Mendez, that's when it was called I'll name this podcast later. So when you sitting there talking shit about Combat and then you saying, oh yeah, Tax is a worker, I was working for Combat, but you know what y'all don't know? Because you minding your business, being a dope fiend, dick riding a nigga that came from the street and surpassed you in a space that you thought that you could take over because you was a platinum rapper and a nigga on Love and Hip Hop getting beat up.
All right, this nigga's wow. All right, let's stop it right there because that was a lot of information. All right, we gonna go to that clip what Joe said about Combat Jack, but what he just said about Joe Budden thinking that he could kind of dominate the podcast space because he was a rapper and he was already in the public eye. Taxstone was just a street nigga, y'all, who just started a podcast. He was a gang member, which that's public. I mean, God, that his name is Taxstone. All right. So if you know it, Taxstone, all right, I'm gonna just say there's gang verbiage in his name. If you know, you know. So I'm not breaking no news here. He was a gang member, all right? So he was a street guy who just started a podcast. Joe Budden, a rapper, Pump It Up was a huge song. You know, he was signed to Def Jam, all this stuff, all these big features he's been on. He was on Love and Hip Hop. So he kind of felt like, and I don't know for sure, but a lot of people, this is how a lot of people felt basically. They thought that Joe Budden felt like because he was a rapper and he was on Love and Hip Hop and he had already, he knew people in the industry, that he was just going to slide into the top spot of podcaster, which he is now at this point. But when Tax was out, him and Tax was like neck and neck, which Joe Budden didn't like that because, like I said, Tax was a street nigga who just decided to start doing podcasts. Now, the thing about Combat Jack, he said it on $1 Million Worth of Game. These are...
Who gave you the game, though?
Rest in peace.
Taxstone.
Everybody did it, though.
Oh, so he said everybody.
Y'all see that? He said, who gave
you the game, though?
When Gilly said Taxstone, y'all see Joe Budden immediately, no, nigga, which a lot of people feel like that's not the case. If you see, we just seen Joe Budden on Taxstone podcast. So what does that tell you? They was cool, right? They was cool. They was fucking with each other. But these are the comments. Let me minimize this so they don't blick my shit. Can I minimize this? I don't want them to blick my shit. All right, these are the comments that led to, these are the Combat Jack comments.
Everybody did it, though.
Oh, so he said everybody.
Everybody that was trying to maneuver in the space. I mean, it started with Combat Jack for me.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, Combat was a legend.
Him and Pete is probably at the top of the start of where that list starts.
It did Taxstone.
Pete, Juan.
You see? Y'all see that? Gilly keeps saying Taxstone because Gilly know Joe Budden is not trying to acknowledge Taxstone as a hip hop podcast pioneer, but you have to. If Tax wasn't, Joe wouldn't respond to him as much as he does.
Well, no, you keep naming workers. That's why we can't have the right conversation. You keep naming workers.
Workers.
I'm not a worker.
No, I said Taxstone gave you some game on the podcast.
He couldn't give me the game I was looking for because he was a worker. I was talking to the people running the network.
Who gave you the game, though?
All right, obviously Joe was finna say I was talking to his boss. That's what he was gonna say. Now I kept stopping that. I'm gonna replay it again, and y'all watch it in the full way through, and look at the energy that Joe Budden is giving about Taxstone.
Taxstone.
Everybody did it, though.
Oh, so he said everybody.
Everybody that was trying to maneuver in the space. I mean, it started with Combat Jack for me.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, Combat was a legend.
Him and Pete is probably at the top of the start of where that list starts.
It did Taxstone.
Pete, Juan. Well, no, you keep naming workers. That's why we can't have the right conversation. You keep naming workers.
Workers.
I'm not a worker.
No, I said Taxstone gave you some game on the podcast.
He couldn't give me the game I was looking for because he was a worker. I was talking to the people running the network.
Who gave you the game?
Y'all see, he don't even want to say Tax gave him game. He don't even want to admit that Tax gave him game, and you know he did. Joe Budden was watching Tax do what he do. In the podcast game, Joe Budden was watching Tax get busy. He was watching Tax Tax was tearing the streets up because he had the hood shit going on. It was just different. It was all, look how $1 Million Worth of Game look, all this clean. This is the prototypical commercial podcast. $1 Million Worth of Game, Joe. But you see how pretty everything look. You see how everything is just polished. Taxstone shit wasn't like that. Taxstone shit was gritty. Taxstone shit was different. And a lot of people copy him, and then they leveled up off of copying him. Now, the picture that you see on the other side, these are the niggas that ran down on Joe for talking crazy about tax. And you see the caption, when a worker could get a boss touch, that's tough. Free my brothers. Hashtag free my brothers. Now, of course, Taxstone said he don't know these guys. Taxstone said he didn't push the button to get niggas to run down on Joe. Niggas ran down and put hands on Joe. He admitted it. He was talking crazy about tax, and niggas ran down on Joe and they put their hands on him. They caught him in some strip club eating chicken, and they got shit shaking. For tax. Joe Budden don't got that kind of reach in the streets like Tax do. Tax still got that. Now, again, allegedly. So, boom, there's that. Now, let's get back to God. There's so much here. Okay, let's get back to this. All right, that we talked about him getting ran down on. We talked about. Let's get back to the recent comments. Again, this was yesterday on the 18th.
What happened is that you didn't like that a nigga grew so big on the internet because nigga, you had 1 million followers and I still don't got 1 million followers. So how the fuck was I doing better than you?
Now, there we go. That's where, because Tax is so beloved in the podcast community. Okay? Joe has way more followers than Tax. Joe got more money than Tax. Joe got more fame than Tax. But when it came to the podcast world, people still kind of seen them the same. And people say Joe didn't like that.
And our shit was coming out a day apart. You never did better numbers than me. I got ads before you. Y'all niggas started falsifying y'all ads. And this is real talk. Tristan Walker, them niggas will tell on that. Nori, all of them was faking their numbers because they said, Tax, how the fuck are you selling 300 razors and these niggas is selling 20? And they talking about they got 1 million views on their show and they got 1 million followers. I said,
all right, let me stop and explain that too. The whole razor thing, that I forgot the company's name. I should have researched that. But in the early podcast, in the early days of podcasting, everybody was going to this razor company for their bag. It was a razor company that was giving people bags during the podcast boom. And they was saying, promote these razors. And they was keeping track of the amount of razors that were being sold. Tax was selling more razors than anybody, which would lead you to believe what? More people are listening to him than anybody. Now, that's not for surely true, but that's how the analytics kind of stack up from the razor company's perspective. And everybody had this partnership. And when you was listening to podcasts, every fucking podcast was shouting out these razors. All right.
That I'm not here to tell you that, man. Those is good dudes, and I left it alone like I knew nothing was going on. But this is why Nori not on CBS now, because they was there faking their numbers at CBS. The first couple episodes, they acting like they got fucking 2 million fucking hits and shit, and the CBS found out and they ain't want to pay up. But you got these weird ass niggas talking shit to me when I'm a nigga who came from the street and knew my business. I went in every office and did my deal. I went in Duce office and brokered my own fucking deal, nigga, with pure knowledge of the liquor industry that I learned off the internet. They was mad because they had to do the deal. They say, yo, Jay said we have to do the deal. He didn't tell us to give you a certain deal. He said we got to do a deal with you. So
all right, so do y'all understand what he's saying? By Jay, obviously he means Jay-Z. So he's saying Jay-Z, who owns Duce, or I don't even know if these people own these liquor companies anymore, but at the time he had some type of big stake in Duce or whatever. And he said that the deal that a lot of the other rap podcasters got, Jay-Z controlled the terms of the Duce deal. Of course, Jay-Z knows Noriega from rap. Jay-Z knows Joe Budden from rap. They all were signed to Def Jam at one point. So the deal that all the rappers were getting from Duce, Taxstone said it was some bullshit because it was engineered by Jay-Z, who owns Duce. So he basically saying Jay-Z was giving them as little as possible, or it wasn't a favorable deal for the podcasters. Taxstone said because he wasn't in the industry, he didn't fucking, Jay-Z don't know who Taxstone is. When he did his deal, because he was independently moving, he got a more fair deal, which that makes sense.
Ended up negotiating some shit that other niggas wasn't even getting at Duce. Right. And you sitting here talking about me like I'm some ignorant dumb nigga. Nigga, I was not even on Loudspeaker Network after the first 4 months, and nobody knows that. I was just using them to get ads. They felt from back then, they say, yo, Tax, you be wilding, you be disrespecting a lot of dudes. Dudes was calling the studio, threatening people at the studio, talking about, yo, we gonna come up there and shoot y'all because of Taxstone. And this is before any of this other shit happened with this rapper dude. Niggas.
Now, from what I heard, there were bang outs at that podcast studio before. Allegedly. Over some stuff that Taxstone was saying. So that's believable. Niggas was in front of the podcast studio with burners, and it's innocent people who work there. What the janitor got to do with that? What the secretary got to do with that? Niggas flamed that whole block up over some Taxstone stuff.
Niggas was just doing it because they didn't like the way I was talking about their music. So right then we did a contract where I got out of the contract I was in with them. So I was independent my whole fucking time. Niggas was listening to me. They just didn't know. And I'm not lying. Chris Morrow is well and alive. He'll tell you.
Now, that's crazy, y'all. That's smart. That is a smart business move. What he basically saying is Loudspeaker, he was too controversial for Loudspeaker. So they didn't want to put him on no paperwork, or they did for about 4 months. Once niggas start coming up to the studio with burners, flaming the block up, busting in front of the podcast studio, they was like, all right, bro, let's end this partnership. We'll still get you ads, but niggas is shooting outside. You can't be in here.
Jonathan Minna is well and alive. I don't be fucking lying to these niggas. That's my biggest gripe with most of these dudes is I don't care about who does. I think mad at these niggas shit is corny and I never say nothing. I don't think Joe Budden got a corny podcast. I've listened to it before. I think he know how to talk. He's a wordsmith.
Joe Budden got a great podcast, and I want to say that too. I'm not taking shots at Joe Budden's podcast. Joe Budden has a very high quality podcast. Don't let that escape, you know what I'm saying, the message. And this episode is not about talking about Joe Budden. Joe Budden is very successful, and Joe Budden has a high quality podcast. When Rory and Ma was on the Joe Budden podcast, those were they weren't some. Those were the best podcasting episodes that I ever heard. And I listened to podcasts early. I was one of the early listeners to podcasts. And Joe Budden, Rory, and Ma made some of the most epic podcast shows. I'm talking about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours, where every minute was entertaining. So I can't take nothing away from Joe.
Can make good content. I think a lot of them other niggas is corny. I think Elliot Wilson is whack. That nigga put you right to sleep. I like B-Dot. B-Dot my man. But I think B-Dot becomes whack being around Elliot Wilson.
There you go.
You understand? And this is just my God honest truth. Like I helped Wallow do the podcast from jail in 2017. I gave this nigga every advertiser I had while I was in jail because PNB Rock said my man just came home from jail. Can you help him? Wallow would tell niggas. I wasn't outside talking about, yo, I helped build $1 million worth of game. I let them niggas grow, flourish, and do their motherfucking thing because that's what they supposed to do. I don't be hating on niggas.
Now, There you go right there. Now, the thing that he said about PNB Rock, Wallow was PNB Rock homeboy, and that's something that people do. People can give people sponsors. If I'm a podcaster, right, and I got 6 sponsors, I can go to one of them and say, hey, I know a guy who can get as much numbers as me. Now, I have to be reputable. I have to have achieved something in that space, but I can say, hey, I know somebody who is gonna be a big deal in a year or so. They starting a podcast is early. Can you sponsor them instead of me and give them an opportunity, or something of the nature of how you can transfer sponsors? But in order to do that, you have to be reputable. You have to be bringing in some numbers. All right, now he spoke a little bit more. I don't want to go there. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about.
Oh, man.
Yeah, here we go.
How is people listening to this dude? That's it.
All right, this was on the 17th as well. Shout out to the stop. This is the same conversation, or it was either a day before or a day after, where he was talking about Poetic Flacco from No Jumper. This is what he had to say about him.
I don't got no beef with him. I never heard him. People just reposted him. I don't know who the. You should not be giving advice. You need to give yourself advice because you might be going into cardiac arrest soon. I don't think he has a. If you look at the picture, there's no sign of a word. He has no. You heard? So my first thing is you got to go get it. You got to go get some. Because you're bragging about working for Adam. You probably had to suck Adam one day. You probably have a Diddy.
All right, you see, he's going in on this nigga. Now, Poetic Flacco did say Taxstone threw his life away or something like that. And let me just say this, man. When somebody has been in prison for as long as Taxstone is, Joe Budden be making the jail jokes, the prison jokes. Poetic Flacco make the prison jokes. Troy Ave be making the prison. And I understand why Troy Ave makes prison jokes, because he bodied your friend. But somebody who's been in prison that long, prison jokes don't bother him, y'all. He's mentally in a space where he's accepted that he's in prison. His main focus is making his life as good as it can be on the inside, which he lives pretty good on the inside, I'm sure. He has rich friends. He has a lot. Not only does he have rich friends, but he has a lot of rich friends who feel like he shouldn't be in prison for that long. Charlemagne the God, Mano, a couple of others, high-ranking gang members, allegedly. So I'm sure Taxstone eats well, he lives well, nobody's bothering him, nobody's messing with him. So Poetic Flacco, Joe Budden making the prison jokes, that doesn't bother him. He's mentally in a space where he's focused on 2 things: getting out, and he constantly reiterates how he's fighting that case and he's going to be free one day. So he's focused on getting out and living the best life he can. I feel like when you go back and forth with somebody like that, making jokes about them being in prison means you really don't have shit else to say. Why respond then if you just gonna joke about him being in prison? You know he in prison. We know he in prison. He know he in prison. If he says something about you and you reply with, well, you're in prison, you shouldn't even say nothing in the first place. Because you're choosing to respond to somebody in prison.
Don't tell me about working for Adam. Adam is a cool dude, but guess what? I'll slap Adam and you and every sit on that couch. You understand? I'm a grown man. Don't talk to me about, oh, you did this and you threw your life away. No, if I'd have threw my life away, I would have been dead, you idiot. You talking about my situation from a rat's point of view. A rat is going to say whatever he got to say to get free. I'm not saying I'll fight my cases in court. Now, second, just like I said, Flacco, I don't know you, bro. I don't got no beef with you, but I just want to know, why would a real alpha male listen to you? alpha males could do push-ups. We could do pull-ups. Ain't nobody listening to you. All I'm saying is you go have conversations to women about women because that's how you shape. You shape like a woman, and only a man that wants to be a woman is going to allow himself to let go like that, bro. Your thighs are crazy. You had to hop in them jeans, bro. You did not get in them jeans one shot, bro. If you got to hop in your jeans, bro, you belong on a Wayne Bryant commercial. Wait.
See, this is why people don't like this nigga. This nigga is doing 35 years in prison. And he's still funny as hell. He's still entertaining. He's still roasting the shit out of a nigga doing that much time. Most people would not expect him to be popping the shit that he's popping. You'll think this nigga at home, free. That's why the title of this live is what it is.
Watches, and you need to get some other something. Talking about this big
not lame, right?
I don't give a platforms.
Wake it up.
What the fuck I mean? Like, I have a huge platform. I don't care.
You wasn't eating good in there. I try to
Hold on, mute up, Doug.
Tell him right now.
I told him already.
If he think he got more money than me, off par. Let's see, nigga. You not.
Let's be real. How many people think he not eating good in there? If niggas ran down on Joe Budden for him in prison, he's getting whatever he want, man. Let's be clear. You think Charlemagne is letting him starve in prison? Come on now.
Talking to no nigga who made money off. You talking to a nigga that makes money? Period. In fact, I'll get you a BBL too. I got the doctor in Colombia if you want to get out there. Just situated because you need to worry about your health. Talking about you save lives. That's good if you save lives, and I commend anyone that's out there trying to do something for the positive and change the narrative of the neighborhood.
This is the jeans that he was talking about. This picture looks fucking crazy though. Let me enhance the picture. This is the picture that Taxstone was roasting of Poetic Flacco. Now I'm not gonna lie, bro. That nigga looked like he wearing women's Fashion Over jeans, dog. I don't know if it's the angle. I don't know if it's the way that nigga leg is turned. But it looked like this nigga lower body is finna fucking explode out them shits. So that's another thing, Poetic Flacco is cool with Troy Ave, I believe. And he constantly talks about how Troy Ave outsmarted Taxstone, which we all know about the Irving Plaza issue. That's the reason that he's in prison. I didn't want to go back that deep because it would just make this video way too long. But speaking on Troy Ave, listen, man. Poetic Flacco is a fan of Troy Ave, and he says the streets is a myth. That's Troy Ave saying. When Troy Ave was rapping, that's all he was rapping about was the streets. You cannot wait until you get indicted for murder and then say the streets is a myth. Why is the streets a myth now, Troy Ave? Once you get in serious trouble. You just made all these songs about how cool the streets was, about how you're this big drug dealer in the streets. The streets make you so much money. You fuck all these bitches in the streets. You're this cool figure in the streets, in your raps. But once you get arrested, once them cuffs click, then the streets is a myth. When Troy Ave started that the streets is a myth campaign, I knew he was going to tell. When niggas start talking like that, when niggas are super gangster, and then when they catch a case and they start talking about their kids, they start talking about their mom, they start talking about their grandma and their granddaddy and their aunts and their uncles, and they start talking about how nobody's helping them, that mean they finna tell. That mean they finna cooperate with the police, which is what Troy Ave did. Troy Ave told. Troy Ave ratted. It is what it is. So, Poetic Flacco says he don't have an opinion on it because he's not a street nigga. I'm not a street nigga either, but I say what the fuck I want, and I can have an opinion on what the fuck I want. And Troy Ave told.
But I'm with that. But all I'm saying is, bro, be quiet and take care of your health. You're talking about how many years I got. How many years do you have? Because your heart don't know. Your heart don't know how many years you got left. Yeah, what is this dude talking about them big ass thighs? All I was doing was joking on your thighs, bro. Now you come through talking about your platform. How you got a top 10 platform in hip hop, and I just heard about you yesterday.
Screaming at a phone making threats from a jail cell is insane.
I didn't
You see how he keep bringing up you in jail, you in jail, you in jail, nigga. Why are you replying to him? Why are you on the phone with him? That type of talk, like trying to act like you superior to him because he's in prison. He got your attention from prison.
make no threats.
Like you were both.
What threats did I make? What threats did I make?
Wait, I thought you
tell me, because you want to reiterate it for the FBI anyway. Tell me what threats I made.
Oh wait, I thought you wasn't speaking to me, but now you are.
What threats did I make?
Weirdo.
All right, did I make a threat? See, you start off lying, you a lying fat, greasy fat. I bet your butt stink right now.
Yeah, man, bro. Listen, bro. Like, dude's a weirdo, man. Listen. So, dude spoke about how big my thighs were, how big it was, how small my penis was, my dick a couple of times, slapping men, and getting 10 bodies done in a prison cell. Listen, man. Like, if anybody finds Taxstone's cool, then that shows what type of right. Like, yo, Taxstone is right where he belongs, my nigga. Bro, Taxstone is an ignorant buffoon, bro.
Man, that's whack as fuck. Why are you replying to him then? Saying he's right where he belongs. I don't agree with that. It's brilliant people in prisons, man. It's rich people in prison. It's people in prison who have way more money than some people in the streets. Once you engage with somebody in prison, you can't try to make them feel bad about being there because mentally they're bringing you there too. If you feel they're important enough to respond, you can't use the "oh, you're in prison" part. Because why are you even responding? A real nigga wouldn't even say. A real nigga would be like, man, I'm not finna get into it with somebody who going through that.
And any who is this comfortable, I guess, speaking like this over a jail phone, talk about if you drop your actors right. Bro, like he's a bum, bro. Listen, Taxstone right now is reliving like the old times. He's angry. I used to beat Joe Rogan. I used to be big, bro. You used to, bro. Again, right now, bro, like the reality is, bro, is you threw your life away, and right now you have nothing.
Fat thighs, bro. That's what we discussing. Wow, what my life got to do with your thighs? I can't talk about them big ass thighs you got.
Many prisons speaking about my thighs is weird, Taxstone. That's weird, bro.
Why is it weird? Your thighs is intruding. Your thighs is all of my thighs. Can you move them?
Joe speaking about my thighs, bro. Bro, Joe have turned you off, my nigga.
About your thighs.
Joe have turned you off, Taxstone. You are now weird, bro.
What you doing with thighs like Malaya?
All right, man. So clear shit. All right, so Poetic Flacco really he couldn't really say shit back to Tax. Tax is that type of nigga, man. Like Poetic Flacco, he's cool. And Poetic Flacco he kind of like early academics. When you just by yourself talking, you sound great. You sound real educated and you sound real witty and shit like that, and you sound real cool. But when you're talking to other people, he's like stuttering and he's shy and it's taking him a long time to process a get back. That's how academics was early. When he by himself and he just talking to a computer, he Mr. Cool. But as soon as somebody else matched that energy, Poetic Flacco, all he could basically say was, "You're in prison." That's all he was saying. So, that's where their issues started. Now, who the fuck is calling? Now, Taxstone spoke a little bit more in depth on Joe Budden later in this conversation. All right, now salute to the stop again. All right, we're coming up on 50 minutes. We're going to cut it at about an hour, but I want to talk about this last part real quick. Joe Budden Taxstone spoke on Queen's Flip, Joe Budden, and Webb and Nitty. This is an angle I've never heard before. Did it seem kind of random when Queen's Flip joined the Joe Budden podcast? To me, yeah, it seemed random. It didn't seem like he was a great fit. Now, he fit better than what I thought. That's a fact. So I was wrong in that sense. It did add a little extra spiciness to the Joe Budden podcast, all right? However, maybe it was a reason for that. Let's hear what Taxstone thinks about Joe Budden or thinks about why Queens Flip joined the Joe Budden podcast. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about that.
About that, why you keep talking about like you this independent dude when you been in that slave record deal with them fucking old niggas from Queens for all these years, nigga?
Okay, them old niggas from Queens is Webb and Nitty. All right, Webb and Nitty are two monumental figures in Queens. They're legendary drug dealers from Queens. I'm just saying, everybody knows, it's public knowledge. What's the Nicki Minaj song where she said I'm Queens like Supreme. Ask Webb and Nitty. Ask Bimmy and Joe. Better bring me my dough. So Nicki Minaj is from Queens too. Queens like Supreme. Supreme is the drug lord, Supreme McGriff. Queens like Supreme, ask Webb and Nitty. Ask Bimmy and Joe. Better bring me my dough. Webb, Nitty, Bimmy, and Joe are associates of Supreme. They were associated with the Supreme team. All right, so Webb and Nitty are legendary drug dealers from Queens. Bimmy is Waka Flocka uncle, Deb Anthony brother, who was a well-known drug dealer. I'm not telling y'all this. Y'all know Bimmy's a drug dealer. Everybody know Bimmy was a drug dealer. A lot of people said he told too. I don't know. That's not my business. I don't know. I'll have to research that. But he was a drug dealer. He worked for Supreme McGriff. He was part of the Supreme team. It's not breaking news. I'm not divulging no information. That's public information. Everybody know Webb and Nitty was a drug dealer. Everybody know Bimmy was a drug dealer. Okay, cool. So Webb and Nitty were Joe's managers. Webb and Nitty was how Joe got that Def Jam deal. Okay? Because they knew people at Def Jam because of their influence in the street.
Like, come on.
Talking
like,
about the Webb and Nitty.
Come on, let's be. Come on.
And that's off the Nicki Minaj song with Yo Gotti. I forgot what it's called. Not Down in the DM, but the other one where she talks about Webb and Nitty.
You got Queens Flip up there because Webb is his brother, nigga. He ain't up there because you fuck with him.
Yeah, that's what they was talking about on the Spaces. I told you, Danny.
He ain't up there because you fuck with him, nigga.
All right, did y'all hear that? Webb and Nitty was Joe's managers. This was 20 fucking years ago. And Tax is saying Joe still owes them favors because they had him in some type of deal. Joe probably didn't recoup. And because Webb is so close with Flip, he was like, hey, Joe, you still owe us money or whatever. Or, maybe not money, but we helped you out, so you help us out with putting Queens Flip on your show. I don't know if that's true. I can't confirm that. But you heard somebody else on Twitter Spaces, they agreed. And they said that's what they heard too.
That nigga up there because you owe the favor. Don't be trying. I don't owe no favors to no niggas. Fuck is wrong with you? I don't live off the strength of men, and those men can't speak to me. We in 3 different calibers, 3 different dimensions. We not in the same. I got one eye. Them niggas got none. So my issue is this. Like, let's just keep my dead man. Word of my mother, I swear to God, he could go off, say whatever he want to say about me. I don't care. I'm not a sensitive dude. I like to joke. So when niggas be getting at me, I don't know if they really think they affecting me. They're not. They're not. You have to do that shit with somebody else. My mother, I swear to God, he could go off, say whatever he want to say about me. I don't care. I'm not a sensitive dude. I like to joke. So when niggas be getting at me, I don't know if they really think they affecting me. They're not. They're not. You have to do that shit with somebody else.
All right, and he has displayed that before. He don't let the jail jokes get to him. A lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people, that would bother them. They wouldn't even be this boisterous as Taxstone is, because the first time they did somebody, everybody's comeback is gonna be what? You in jail. You in jail. You got 35 years. You got 35 years. That shit don't bother him. You can tell because he keep popping his shit. That shit don't bother him, man. This is a dude that's emotionally and mentally strong. You know what I'm saying? Whether you like him or not, whether you like his antics or not, it's hard to get to people like that. That's kind of the prototype of person that you need to be the type of podcaster that he is. So I don't know why there's no sound after that. But that was basically the meat and potatoes of that issue with
respectful.
Or of the back and forth. Now, this is the last thing that we're gonna talk about. This is what got Joe Budden ran down on. This was the first in-depth banter that they had that kind of led to this. Now, this was at the end of 2023. This is what Joe said that got him ran down on.
To do a podcast. And secondly, why do you need a gun to interview me?
All right, let me rewind that. The first part that Joe Budden was talking about, when somebody brought up the first podcast that they did, Taxstone mentioned how he had the burner on him the whole time. Taxstone probably has a gun on him at all times, all the time. Obviously, if he went to jail for murder. So he clearly had one at Irving Plaza. So that doesn't really seem like a big deal. I guess Joe was offended by that. So here's what he had to say.
Why the fuck does somebody need a gun to do a podcast?
Nigga, he don't need a gun to do a podcast. Some people have guns on them no matter what they do at all times. That's normal.
Secondly, why do you need a gun to interview me? I'll allow a brief moment of silence right here so the audience can pick up on what's blasphemous about both of those statements anyway. You guessed it. Why do I even know that you have a gun on you if you got one? But you height-deprived street niggas tend to overcompensate, and y'all scared the shit out of me. I thought all of that was weak. I did.
All right, now, I don't know. I don't want Joe Budden to blick me, so I might kind of just fast forward. I'm going to just keep pausing it because the Joe Budden podcast, they done hit me with copyright before. They ain't strike me, but I don't even like the word copyright being by my shit.
Then, right, what happened after that? What happened after that, after I did that part? Oh, shit, wait. Then Charlemagne granted you an opportunity.
Now you see Joe Budden about to go down the line of everything that's been happening between them.
And I watched you get sunned out. I thought it was super weak, but hey, to each his own. Either he totally lost his backbone or now we both have scoliosis. But boy, did you get to shucking and jiving and dancing. I thought that was weak. I did. Then me and your man got it on around the corner. Shout out to him. Salute. You got to come up here still.
Did they get it on or did niggas beat your ass, Joe? And he don't want them up there.
And the very next morning, you was on Twitter divulging every single detail of that dance like you was fucking Lisa Evers. I thought it was weak. I did. But that's not even the weakest part. You brought a gun to a benefit concert. To whose benefit? You pulled that little gun in a small, crowded room, endangering the lives of moms, dads, uncles, all of the people in there. I thought it was weak. You murdered a good man. And you
see how he keep fidgeting with the mic? He don't usually do that. He'll do it sometimes, then stop. He does it. He's been doing it ever since he's been talking. Just pay attention. I pay attention to stuff like that. That lets me know the things that he's saying our deep-rooted feelings coming to the surface.
You shot a good woman. Shout out to her. You online stalked Troy Ave for years.
Now, that narrative I do not agree with. Troy Ave is not a victim here, y'all. Troy Ave went there thinking he was tough, trying to be tough. They thought they was going to jump Taxstone, and he started busting. And somebody lost their life. Troy Ave, homeboy, lost his life. Rip Banger McFatter, by the way. R.I.P. to him. His family's still going through it. We talking about it. You know what I'm saying? This is a part of the culture and everything that's going on with it. His family's the ones that's really going through it. Rest in peace to Banger McFatter. Gun violence is not cool at all. But Troy Ave came there with those intentions, trying to be Mr. Tough Guy. Shit didn't go how he thought. They thought they was gonna jump on Taxstone and just beat his ass. But he upped the tool, and he got the rocking.
Years. I just don't know real niggas to move that way. But hey, maybe you was making up your own rules. But I thought that was weak too. I did. Then you pulled that gun out. Why you couldn't just get punched in the face, actually? I thought that was weak. I did. Then you pulled that gun out and a nigga took the gun from you and chased you all around the fucking venue. My nigga, I don't know what definition we going by.
You see how everybody else is just quiet? Everybody else is just quiet. They know this is something that's been bothering Joe Budden for a while. Taxstone gets to Joe Budden. Taxstone gets under Joe Budden's skin more than anybody that I've ever seen encounter him.
But we clearly have two very different definitions of weak. You soft, fragile, insecure ass nigga. And then you got the nerve to be mad that I went on Gilly and Wallow's podcast and said that my inspiration was Combat Jack and that I didn't pull much inspiration from you because you are a worker. You niggas be sensitive and mad at my honest truths. Rest in peace to Combat Jack.
Man, stop it, Joe. You said that in a disrespectful way. The way you're saying it now is way more respectful than what you said because we just seen it on $1 Million Worth of Game. So stop with that.
Iconic legend. It's my man and I miss him. But that's who I was talking to. And you were indeed a worker. You were working for Loudspeaker. That's back when y'all was running around saying that y'all got, what was y'all so happy about? 15% of the ad money that y'all was getting when Loudspeaker was taking 30 to 40% off the top. Y'all was excited about it. That screamed worker to me.
Okay, there we go. That's back to my previous point where Joe Budden said, and Noriega said this too, Combat Jack and Loudspeaker Network was putting people in fucked contracts. But let me explain something, man. When you're a pioneer, when you're the first group or when you're the first wave of something, you're going to get fucked. That's how it is. When you're a pioneer and when you first do something, you're going to get fucked. You're the guinea pig. You will be remembered as a legend, but you will not reap the financial benefits of the people after you. That's what happens. The reason that they were so happy about getting 15% is because they were doing something that nobody has ever done before. The people at Loudspeaker, the first wave of people, Taxstone and a couple of others, they were the first people to do this. They were pioneers. They were embarking on new territory, and they were doing something that nobody had ever done. And when you're a pioneer and when you start things and when you're an innovator, you usually get fucked financially in the beginning.
You are a worker for Loudspeaker. You are a worker for depopulation. You're now a worker for the state. You are a worker for Black Death. And still somehow you have the audacity to be in there focused on and talking about everybody but you, which is where I get befuddled at, because the judge gave you 35 years, not for the crime. People have done worse and gotten less. He gave you a stupid ass 35 years so you could sit there and fucking think. So you could just say to yourself, yo, I earned this.
Man, these niggas better hope Tax don't get out.
Next time you sit your bare ass on that hard metal toilet seat, all you need to say to yourself is, I earned this. I don't want to hear none of these niggas that sing your praises. Tax be dropping gems. Them gems got you where?
Man, Tax is a good podcast. To me, y'all hear how Joe Budden talking? I don't want to hear these niggas singing your praise, because he's hearing that people will fuck with Tax from a podcast perspective forever. Forever. No matter if he's in jail for 35 years. Joe don't like that. That bothers Joe.
Did you improve on the design or did you do something new? It's now over for the Tax brought the streets to podcasting. No.
Nigga, he did. Y'all see? He did bring the streets to podcasting. No, yes, he did. Regardless of what happened after they was brought, regardless of his decisions that he made at Irving Plaza that night to start banging inside a club full of people. I don't condone that. I don't think that was smart. But I'm talking about him as a podcaster. He's a brilliant podcaster. Obviously, if you're still responding to him after he got a 35-year prison sentence.
The streets took you from it. It's a bitter taste having to watch niggas like me and Gilly and Wallow and Nori and Math have all of this success out here while you post these 2016 polls. But sit with that. Embrace that cinnamon challenge. It's bitter, I know. But the last thing you need to be worried about is what anybody else is doing. I think it's weak. I think you're weak. I think you've always been weak. And some of the things that I think is dope, like freedom, like being there for your parents, for your family, for your kids, for your children, buying real estate, setting up trust, the 401k shit. I was just talking about sports earlier with my little brother. I think all that shit is fly. And all of you pretend wannabe pseudo street niggas, maybe you wouldn't understand it. So as you age in there, you should think about all of these things.
You see how it's just you in jail, you in jail, you in jail, you in jail. That's all that Joe Budden is really saying throughout this whole rant.
This has been the pattern for about 15 years now. A short, fragile, height-deprived, insecure nigga doing his best to overcompensate. And why do you ask niggas for favors that you feel this way about? I think that's weak too. All of you niggas is fragile, bitch-ass niggas. And had you said any of this when you was free, you know we could have danced around the corner. You know that. You know that already.
All right, man. So that it was the main thing. Once he said that, this shit was up forever. This is not going away. It wasn't going away. For that reason, everything that we just discussed in this past hour and 8 minutes is why I feel Taxstone should start a full podcast operation from prison. Like I said, I don't know where his mental space is. I know he got a resource to do that. I don't know what prison he's in. I don't know if the prison will even allow something like that. But every time he get on Twitter Spaces or Twitter, or he was on Clubhouse a couple times, he go off. And the urban podcast space is in a bad place right now. And they could definitely use Tax, man. So I'm going to wrap this show up. I'm going live later again. I'm about to goddamn run out of streaming hours. For StreamYard, you get 20 hours every month on the free on the free plan, I'm gonna have to upgrade probably today or tomorrow because my hours are almost already gone. All right, but I'm gonna still be on live later today, possibly tonight. Enjoy y'all Juneteenth. Salute to all the slaves that was freed. And we'll be back later. Thank you for watching Urban Artificial Intelligence, where we turn artificial intelligence into our official intelligence. All right. Strategic Thinking Media Platform. Like, share, subscribe. Help the channel grow. 1,800 plus subscribers, 2 million plus views. This is at Strategic Thinking Hip Hop Media Platform with over 2 million views. Thank y'all. And I'm going to see y'all on the next one. Peace.